When a person goes through some pain, God forbid, you should think this: I'm not going to judge according to what my eyes see. I'm not going to jump to conclusions. Sharahu, that what's happening now is bad. Painful, yes. I wasn't looking for this. It's not necessarily what I want. But to decide that it's a bad thing that is happening, which it does seem on the surface, I'm not going to jump to that conclusion. The truth is that in its source, where this thing is coming from, is good. Because there is no bad that comes from Hashem. There's only complete goodness that comes from Hashem. So whatever's happening to me now is a part of life that comes from Hashem. And as it came from Hashem, in Hashem's intent, in His plan, this was a good thing. As I'm experiencing it now, it seems to the eye, to the naked eye, it seems like a bad thing. It's painful. But I'm not going to jump to that conclusion that it is bad because it feels bad. Because everything that comes from Hashem is good, and so therefore this must also be good. Rak shu einu musug. The problem is, this is a goodness that cannot be grasped, can't be experienced as good. I'm not consciously aware of the goodness that is happening. But why? Why am I not experiencing the goodness if this is really good? Because this is a type of goodness that is not able to descend into this lowly world. So therefore, the goodness of it remains above. And what I experience is a lack of goodness. V'zeu nikra michle dakik, we're after the small print brackets. V'zeu nikra michle dakik, shu be'emes chayusa yizbarach. And this is called the subtle, thin food, which is really the life force of Hashem. I don't understand those last words, what that means. Michle dakik means thin, dakik means thin, subtle, narrow, like slight food, which is really the life force of Hashem. I don't know what that means. The phrase michle dakik, I wasn't able to find mentioned anywhere else except this maamar. It's an Aramaic word. It sounds like a phrase from the Zohar somewhere. In the brackets it says, look at the Zohar where the word dakik is used, but it doesn't. I didn't understand. But the point of what I was saying till now is that this is a meditation that a person can think when something happens to you and your knee-jerk reaction would be, something bad just happened to me. I'm going through something bad. This is a bad thing. That would be fair enough. From a superficial perspective, you're absolutely right. It is bad. It's painful. It's hurtful. It's not good. It's not what we want. But, says the Alter Rebbe, but you have to stop. A chassid is somebody who contemplates on reality, doesn't jump to conclusions. So you have to stop and say, what is actually happening now? What has just happened to me? It's something that I'm experiencing as bad, but does that mean it is bad? Is this a punishment? Is Hashem being vengeful against me for something I've done wrong? Am I getting this because I'm no good? Is Hashem out to get me? Not necessarily. That should not be the conclusion we draw. Because the fact that I'm experiencing something as negative, in its source, where it's coming from, it must be positive. Because everything that comes from Hashem is good. There's no bad in Hashem. So there's nothing bad that can happen from Hashem. It's just the way I'm receiving it, on the receiving end, is negative. Why? Because it's a type of goodness that cannot come down into my world. For several possible reasons, which we'll see in the maamar, that this is goodness that can't come into the world as goodness. So I receive the lack of goodness that it is. But that's just on the receiving end. That's not what it actually is. That's not what its intention is. And so I shouldn't conclude that this is a bad thing. It's something that I'm experiencing as negative.
I understand that even things that we perceive as bad in its source is good, and I understand that even when we see them as not good, it's for the good, right? But could sometimes, if Hashem, like, what if it is supposed to be a punishment, and what if what if it's retribution? You know, what if it is because we did X, Y, and Z, so this is happening? Is that just not?
Well, even that. Let's say it's a punishment. What is a punishment? What does a punishment mean? Why does a person get punished?
To teach them.
To bring them closer
to teach them, to cleanse them, to bring them closer, that they should graduate. So it's also not bad. It's not a bad thing happening.
While it's happening.
Even if it's not a punishment, while it's happening, it's pain. You're going through pain. It's painful.
Yeah.
So to say, the idea here is to become a more sensitive, deeper person to the reality, not to react in the way we normally do, which is just knee-jerk reaction. What I feel, that's it, and that's at the end of it, without any thought. Here to contemplate. So let's say it is a punishment, but what's the punishment for? Does punishment come out of hate or out of love? Only love.
But that's because we learn it that Hashem is all good. But when we think about punishment from other places, couldn't it be not from love?
There's revenge. There's violence. There's that's
It's not.
But here we're talking about something that comes from Hashem. Even if it's a punishment, even that's love. And even that, we cannot always conclude that things that are bad are punishments. Maybe not.
But then why do we have marked mourning for it? Like, for example, Tisha B'Av is a marked day of the day we were punished, the basement was destroyed, we did and it was bad, we were fasting or something.
Right, because even there, we have to recognize what we are experiencing. We are experiencing the pain. The Beis Hamikdash being destroyed was a bad thing from our perspective, but not from Hashem's perspective. Even Tisha B'Av is a yontif. Even today, it's we don't say Tachanun on Tisha B'Av. There's an element to Tisha B'Av that it's a yontif, and the whole davening of Tisha B'Av is about the destruction and about the rebuilding. When we recognize the Tisha B'Av itself, we don't yet appreciate Tisha B'Av, but Tisha B'Av will become a yontif, a proper yontif when Mashiach comes. Why? It should be cancelled. Why does it become a yontif? Because then we'll realize that what we experienced is bad, and we did experience it as bad, and therefore we have to mourn and we have to take that message, but it was actually good. And so even now, it's not saying here that when bad things happen you should celebrate. Be happy. Bad things are happening because you know what? It's really good. Just it's so high you can't experience it. That's not what it's saying. When bad things happen you have to feel the pain. Sometimes you have to mourn. Sometimes you have to get the message that it's but if you think that it's a bad thing coming from Hashem, that this is bad, that's the mistake. This is good. Just I'm experiencing it as bad because my current circumstances don't allow me to experience it for what it really is. It won't change won't necessarily change the pain. It won't take the pain away, but it takes a certain edge off the pain. Because when you're experiencing pain that you think is callous or vengeful or just out to get you, meaningless or mean, so then that's hard to handle, impossible to handle. When you experience pain that you understand is meaningful and is actually an expression of love, it's a very different experience of pain. So this is not to trivialize pain, that's not the idea, or to dismiss it, but it's to look at it from a deeper perspective. Same thing with the Satan. Remember here, this maamar is basing the idea on what the Zohar says about the Satan, that Satan is hired by Hashem to tempt us away, to do the wrong thing. So is Satan good or bad?
Both.
when we overcome it.
How can be both? How can Satan be good and bad?
In the source, he's good.
It's true, and he does his job very well, which we want to do. He leads us to bad. So we should not mix with him.
Okay, so is Satan your friend or your foe?
Foe.
The way he
Well,
comes
if
to
you
us,
understand
he's our
him.
foe. When he comes to us, it's a we're foe.
Yeah.
When
But
he's dealing upstairs and being paid, or whatever it is, like being hired,
Mhm.
then they're on side. But the way we're receiving it, it's our.
okay, so our view of Satan should be: this is our enemy. This is a force that is out to get us, that hates us, and we have to hate him back. That's what evil is.
So, why? I think he was being sarcastic.
No.
I don't get the part about hating him back. I feel like with evil or with something that, bless you, I feel like it's better, you've got to combat it. And to combat it, it's not the feeling of hate that's going to combat it, it's more the understanding understand it, and like then know your place with it, or know its place with you, as opposed to hating it. Hating's an emotion, and it's just it's a raw emotion, and it's going to lead you to act with your emotions.
We're very queasy about the word hate. You're not supposed to hate anything or anyone. But evil, you are supposed to hate. You are supposed to hate evil. Nothing personal, just I hate evil.
But I think it was good in its source. How can it be evil?
Oh, so then if it's good in its source, how can we hate it? And if it's not evil, so is it our friend or our foe?
Fuck. We don't hate it.
But it's good in its source.
We just stay away from it.
Yeah, but we're not in the source. We're here.
Yeah.
So it's not good.
No.
But in its source it is. So then why do we need to know what it is in its source? What difference does it make to us?
We can understand why we have to separate ourselves.
No, better to just know that you have to stay away from it. Why do we need to know what it is in its source?
Because then if we...
That it's good in its source?
Because we know it's sent to us as a challenge as opposed to this full-on like...
Right. If you're aware of this, if you're aware that this force that is trying to get you, that it's out to get you, trying to pull you down, and it's a force not outside there, it's in you, it's your inner voice, your Yetzirah that's telling you to do the wrong thing. If you're aware that that voice is actually your enemy, but it's playing a role of your enemy because it was sent by Hashem to do its job, and its job is to try and pull you down. If you're aware of that, so then that's half the battle. Half the battle is to know that this force, I cannot befriend this force. I can't be chummy with Satan and say, oh, you're sent from Hashem, me too, don't worry, we're on the same side. Because once you're chummy with him, he'll get you even worse. You can't be friendly with him. But by knowing, I know what's behind you. I know what your force really is. As soon as you've done that, you've taken Satan back to where he belongs, where he comes from. You've diffused some of his power. You can't be fooled anymore. As long as you see Satan as being a real force, presenting a real option to do evil, you're tempted to do it. When you realize that Satan is not really wanting me to do evil because he's hired by Hashem. Down here, he's totally evil, but in his source, it's from Hashem. So then already you've won half the battle. It's gonna be, you've got an edge. Back to the prince. If the prince would just know if this woman who is trying to seduce him is actually an employee of his father, and it's just a test, would it be a test anymore? Would it be hard?
I think it would still be a bit hard sometimes.
I think,
If you knew it was a test.
but he knows that it's one test. If he just gets through that one, then it's fine. Us is like every single thing. We're doing it again.
And sometimes we're just
So then
weak, and it's like,
yeah.
okay, so I want to enjoy it one time.
That's still not knowing it's a test. That's when you think it's not really Satan. It's not really bad. It's not really God either. I'm like, when you fool yourself that it's not really that way, so then you can do it. But if you see things for what it is, if you know you're being tested, you wouldn't dream of doing it.
I was going to say, you said half the battle is just knowing that the Yetzirah is from Hashem. So whenever it speaks up, so you know, it takes off the edge by just knowing who you're facing. Truth be told, when you struggle with the Yetzirah, the hardest thing is often working out if it's like pushing you too hard rather than making the choice. So sometimes the Yetzirah is like saying overdo things, and sometimes the Yetzirah is saying don't do something. You can identify as long as you want that they both come from Hashem, but you still have to make a choice. You're not choosing between doing it or not, you're choosing like what's it saying. That seems to be more the
Okay,
challenge.
that's the first step is identifying the Yetzer Hara for what it is. That's number one.
Yeah, like
That's before this. Before you have to know what is Yetzer Hara and what is Yetzer Tov. That itself is a confusion. So for sure, until you recognize that, you're not in the battle at all. Until you can identify, no, that voice is the Yetzer Hara. So then there's nothing to talk about. That is hard. Often the Yetzer Hara doesn't come and say do a
I was
sin.
going to say, like, fine,
It says do a
someone
mitzvah,
comes-
just not that mitzvah, this mitzvah.
Or do this mitzvah all the time and then boom, burn out.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, exactly. So that's the first thing. But here, once you've got past that stage where you're recognizing this is Yetzer Hara. I know this is Yetzer Hara, so how am I going to overcome the Yetzer Hara? Sometimes it's not enough to identify who is the voice. You then have to go deeper and say, and who is the Yetzer Hara? What is this Yetzer Hara? An employee of Hashem, sent to test me, doing a great job. The Yetzer Hara is doing a fantastic job fulfilling its mission, so I should do an equally great job and fulfill my mission.
But I just feel like the challenge is identifying what is the Yetzer Hara. I don't feel like the challenge is, if you know it's the Yetzer Hara, then of course you're going to go against it. But it's your arguments before that, it's the arguments that make you decide whether or not it is or isn't. There's a battle before what we're discussing that I think is the stumbling block, not...
Maybe this is more in relation to something that's obviously bad that happens to you. You lose your job, or I don't know, something really, really bad happens. This is explaining that. This is explaining pain.
Well, first it's talking about evil in the world. Then it's saying, and by extension, bad things that happen to you.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, like I think I understand what you mean by emotional evil. I guess I'm trying to now relate our relationship with the Yetzer Hara within that emotional evil. And I guess what I'm saying is, are you discussing identifying the Yetzer Hara, or are you discussing once you're 100% sure you know that what you're thinking is the Yetzer Hara?
Now, what this maamar is trying to teach us is a deeper appreciation of what the Yetzer Hara is. A simplistic level before this maamar, without this maamar, is that there's evil and good, two voices battling inside you, and your job is to overcome the evil and do the good. And part of that is recognizing which is evil, which is good. Here, this maamar is saying, here's a step further. That if you've recognized the evil and you're battling against it and overcoming it, okay, but there's still an evil that you need to overcome. There's another tactic that will sometimes help you, and that is to realize that there is actually not two sides to this battle. There's only Hashem. And both the good side, the good inclination, and the evil inclination, Satan himself, is also on Hashem's side. It's just down here in our reality, it comes out as two sides. And that itself diffuses the power of Satan for you. It weakens the power of Satan when you realize that. The problem is we forget that very quickly. Forget that idea. Now, by extension, the Alter Rebbe says the same thing happens with pain. When you're going through a painful thing, something bad happens to you. I'm not saying you did something bad happened to you. So the immediate logical reaction is, this is bad, something bad has happened to me. And if bad things have happened to me, that means that I'm getting the bad side of things. Hashem is sending me bad, which means he's upset at me, angry at me, I've done the wrong thing, or I'm being rejected, and that's why I've received this bad thing, which leads to feeling worse and everything that comes with that. Says the Alter Rebbe, you have to stop and say, when the bad thing happens to you, stop and say, I'm not going to jump to that conclusion, because what's bad down here has a good source, has a source in goodness, in holiness. I'm experiencing it as bad, but that doesn't mean that's what it is. That's not its definition. It's bad down here. That's true, and I can't ignore that. But it is not bad in its source. The Alter Rebbe is now going to explain this idea. Well, after the brackets, you see where there's small print brackets about a quarter down.
I'm just confused. What's the difference between like pain and suffering and evil? Because you said there was a difference.
Evil means like moral evil.
Okay.
Pain and suffering means
Okay.
emotional bad things.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Excuse me.
we're on there's a line that starts with small print and the brackets end in the middle of that line. That's where we're up to. V'zehu b'chol ma'odcha. It says that you have to love Hashem b'chol ma'odecha. You know, we say in the Shema, b'chol ma'odecha, you have to love Hashem with all your might.
Exists being
What is might?
everything.
B'chol levavcha
Yeah,
means
Sahara
all
is
your
the-
heart. That's b'chol levavcha. Love Hashem with all your heart. B'chol nafshecha with all your soul. And b'chol ma'odecha with all your
Yeah, Sahara.
Possession.
ma'od. What's ma'od mean? So, k'maamar. Here's an explanation of ma'odcha. There's many different translations of ma'odcha, by the way. It's a strange word. What does ma'od mean usually?
Very.
Very. All your very.
Ready to go to Israel.
Yeah, totally.
Very is usually not a noun. It's like not. There's not a thing called a very. Love Hashem with all your very. What's ma'odcha? K'maamar toiv ma'od. So it says in the Medrash an unbelievable thing. When Hashem looked at creation, He said it was toiv ma'od. It's very good. Toiv ma'od, very good. Right in creation, 6 days of creation, Hashem looked at the world and He said it is toiv ma'od. It is very good. It says the Medrash, toiv ze malach hachayim. Good is the angel of life. Ma'od ze malach hamoves. But very of the very good is the malach hamoves, the angel of death. You got that? Good is the angel of life. Very good is the angel of death. Why? Shehu toiv ma'od. Because the angel of death, which is Satan, which is the Yetzer Hara, they're all synonymous. He's very good. Bli shir ugvul. An unlimited goodness. That's why it's called toiv ma'od. The word very, ma'od, really means infinite. What does very mean? Whatever it is, it's more. It's good, there's very good. The word very by itself just means more. More and more and more. Infinite, never ending. So when it says you should love Hashem with b'chol ma'odecha, it means with your very, it means with your infinitely, no limitation. With your heart, with your soul, that's a certain measure. But with your ma'od means infinitely. You should love Hashem infinitely. That's what ma'od means. So good is a limited expression. Ma'od, toiv ma'od, is unlimited. So the angel of life, the angel of positivity, of happiness, of goodness, that is good. But the angel of death is ma'od, is infinite goodness. But the problem with infinity is, the infinity is something you can't relate to. And so therefore you don't experience it. What the Alter Rebbe here is saying is a very profound idea. That good and evil, as far as we experience good things and bad things, they're really two expressions of the same thing. They're both coming from Hashem. One of them is good, and one of them is infinitely good. It's very good. What does that mean? One of them is good that is limited, and therefore we can experience it, we can handle it. Because we are limited beings, we can only experience that which is limited. But then there's another thing which is unlimited goodness. Unlimited goodness is higher than limited goodness, but for that very reason, it's beyond us. We can't experience it, we can't handle that. So what do we experience unlimited goodness as? Lack of goodness. Because it's too much for us. We see this in the pasuk. Look after the next small brackets there. V'zeu yisor yisrani ka. That's what we say in Tehillim. Actually, it was today's Tehillim. That Hashem, using the name Yud-Kei, has afflicted me. Yisor yisrani ka. Hashem has afflicted me. But it says there, it doesn't say Hashem's full name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. It says Yosser Yisrani Ka, Yud-Kei. Who has afflicted me? Yud-Kei. Shehu b'tchilas Hashem. The first two letters of Hashem's name, Yud-Kei, the first half of Hashem's name, That's where affliction, pain, suffering comes from. Tchilas hiskalusai, meaning the higher level of revelation of Hashem. Shadaim lo bali de gilui, that has not yet come down into revelation. Be'enu musuk, and is not experienced, shadaim lo nisgal lakol, because it hasn't been revealed to us. That's where pain comes from. So the pasuk in Tehillim says, Yisrael Yisrael, it's in Hallel, that I'm being afflicted by Yud-Kei, meaning I'm receiving what to me is experienced as pain. Why? Because it's really goodness, but it's coming from a place that's too high for me to handle. It's coming from Yud-Kei, the upper part of Hashem's name, the first part of Hashem's name, the higher part that is beyond experience in this world. And so therefore I just receive a lack of goodness. But it's not because that's what it is, it's just because that's what I'm experiencing from the receiving end. I don't have the receptacles to handle it. This also explains the character mentioned in the Gemara by the name of Nachem Ish Gamzu. Who is Nachem Ish Gamzu? Rather famous person, because he used to say Gamzu L'Tova. Whatever happened to him, he said, this is also good. Gamzu L'Tova. So they called him Nachem Ish Gamzu because he became famous for saying Gamzu. This too is for the good. And in his life he saw unbelievable miracles because he said that. He's the one that was taking a chest of jewelry to give to the emperor as a gift from the Jewish people, and it was stolen from him, and the thieves replaced it with sand so he wouldn't notice. So he was carrying a chest of sand, and he arrived at the king and gave it to the king, and the king opened it and it was a big chest of sand, the gift from the Jews. So he said, I'm going to kill you. He said, Gamzu L'Tova. So then one of the ministers said, or maybe this is the dirt that Avram Avinu used. When he threw the dirt, it turned into arrows and it vanquished all his enemies. So the king said, well, let's try it. We're in the middle of a war. Go and try it. So they took it, and indeed it turned into arrows, and so he was rewarded. He said, Gamzu L'Tova, and that's what happened. And several other stories about him. So how did he slip in here? Shahaya Omer Gamzu L'Tova. He used to say, this is good. Whatever happened to him, this is good. Because he was able to contemplate when something really bad happened to him. He didn't jump to the conclusion. He stopped and contemplated and said, this looks like bad news. The chest of gold that was supposed to be for the king was stolen and replaced with sand. That would generally be a stuff up in life. That wouldn't be, if you're standing in front of the king and presenting to him a chest full of sand, that would be bad news. But he contemplated that in its source, this must be good. And by contemplating on that, he was able to take the happening, the episode that was in front of him, and raise it to where it comes from, to its source above. L'mokum ayin, to the place of nothingness. And therefore it could be rearranged and come back down as a good thing. Again, he was able, this is what the level that he was on. Whatever was going on down here, he was able to capture the moment that looked really bad and visualize it going back to its source, back in the undifferentiated source where it's nothing, and there retranslate it into the good that it really was and bring it down as good. His ability was not just to believe that something bad is really coming from a good source. His ability was to actually rearrange the bad that it should come down as good. And therefore he could say Gamzu L'Tova. And it happened for him in real life. You and I might not be able to get there. We may just have to believe that in its source it's good, and even though I'm experiencing it as pain, it's not because Hashem hates me, it's because there's goodness that I cannot handle at the moment, and so therefore it's coming down as bad. And we have to suffer through that and recognize the pain we're in, but at the same time believe that this is not vengefulness. Hashem is not out to get us. But we just have to believe that. It's not always going to happen that it's going to end up good in front of our eyes. We're not going to see the good always. It'll sometimes just stay bad. But for Nachem Ish Gamzu, he was on such a level that he could actually take it to its source, and in its source there is no bad, and then he could bring that source back down here. Gamzu L'Tova. It's similar to another story in the Gemara of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, Misha Amal Hashem Yadlik, who he did in his house there was no oil to light the Shabbos candles once, and his wife said, "Well, I've got some vinegar." So he said, "Okay, so light the vinegar." The same God that said that oil should light will say that vinegar can light, and it did, and it lit. Now vinegar generally doesn't do that. So what did it mean? His emunah was so strong that he didn't see things as they are down here. He sees things as they are in the source. So why does oil light? Because Hashem said it should. So Hashem can also say that vinegar can light. It can burn. Why not? He was on the level where he didn't see this world on its superficial external level, but he saw it in its source. In its source, you can rearrange things. Things don't have to stay the way they are. Down here, things are defined. Down here, Satan is evil. Down here, bad things happen. They are bad down here. In their source, they're good. You and I, believe that, but we don't have access to that. Tzaddikim, they can actually go up there and bring down the goodness that's in potential down into reality. So things end up good. For us, we just have to believe it.
So is that what will happen when Mashiach comes?
Yeah, that will be revealed. Yeah. So listen to this. After the next small print bracket there, the line starts with HaTorah in small, in the middle of that line. Halfway down the page, a bit more. V'zeu inyan hatefillah. This is the whole idea of davening. Everything we've been describing till now is what davening is about. Shebegufa adam ba'olam hazeh. You daven in a physical body down here in this world, and you daven to Hashem. Shanashama b'soich haguf sevelas tzaros v'yisurim. The soul stuck in the body is in a huge amount of pain, is extremely frustrated and stuck. All the soul wants to do is connect to Hashem, and that's it. And the body doesn't let it. The body is torturing the soul by getting involved in bodily, physical things and not letting the soul just connect to Hashem, which is all it wants to do. It's like the golus of the Shechina. It's like Hashem himself is in golus. That just like Hashem has to give life and existence to evil people in this world. Why does he have to? Because he's in golus, because the world is not in its correct way. The powers of evil have a hold. And so therefore Hashem has to reluctantly enliven evil as well. So too, in exactly the same way, the neshama has to enliven the body. And what does the soul want out of the body? The body is running after taivas, physical pleasures, and even sinful things. Who is enlivening that? Who's paying for it? Who's funding the body to go out and party? The soul. Because the soul is the energy of the body. And the soul is stuck in the body, so it's crying out, I don't want to do this, but it has to. The soul is in extreme pain living in a body. And it's not in the body for itself. The whole reason the soul came down into this world is not for itself, is for the body, to elevate the body, to refine the body, to make the physical world higher. So here you have this soul on this selfless mission, stuck and being schlepped in the wrong direction. It's very painful for the soul. And the whole point is to purify and elevate our body. Our body doesn't just mean our physical body, it means our personality and our character and our habits and our mentality and attitude, all the things that come in with this world. Our job is to purify and work on it and elevate it and refine it. And the more evil is mixed in, the more coarse and lowly your personality is, the more passionate the fire has to be to purify it, to elevate it, to get rid of the negativity and bring it up. So we have to purify the body from this evil urge, and to bring it to its source. Just like the king has to recognize that this zona, this prostitute, is a really sent by the king, his father, so too we have to recognize that the body and the Yetzer Hara and all of this is really coming from Hashem. It's the whole reason we're here in this world and we have this unbelievable struggle with our negative urges. All of it is from Hashem. It's all because Hashem wants to create a home for himself here in this world. The more mixed in and intertwined the good and evil is in this world and in your personality, the stronger the fire necessary, the more passionate the fire, the spiritual fire necessary to extract and transform it. And this all happens in davening. In davening is when we light that fire. Davening is when we're, the whole point of davening is to ignite within ourselves a love, a passion, a yearning for Hashem, to give the soul a bit of voice, give it its voice. Like the Alter Rebbe says elsewhere that, like when you have a fire, you need to blow the fire to rise it up. So all the words of davening, the talking of davening, is to blow up the fire of the soul, that it should burn, and that burning will purify our animalistic urges and reconnect ourselves to Hashem. That's the whole point of davening. And the lower you are, the more passionate the davening needs to be. So v'lachein, after the small brackets there in the middle, v'lachein b'bayis rishon shlo haya hara harba. So therefore, in the times of the first Beis Hamikdash, the first temple, evil was not so deeply entrenched in the world. They didn't need this passion of davening. Because then they brought karbanos, they brought sacrifices, and the sacrificial service in the temple was enough to draw up and bring up the physical world towards Hashem. An external act of bringing a karban, that was enough. They didn't need all the deep meditation of davening, the inner struggle of davening. There was meditation that went along with sacrifices, but bring the sacrifices, that was enough. Because the world was not so contaminated, it wasn't so magushim, it wasn't so vulgar as it is. Already in the second temple times, then they started davening. But it was short davening in measure to the amount of passion needed to extract the evil. The evil was not so deeply entrenched, so therefore they didn't need a lot of davening. They need a little bit of davening. But what about us? 2,000 years later. We need to daven a lot. With a lot of passion. That's why davening has become longer and longer and longer. You notice that? Shema, we used to say the Shema. Then they made a Shema Esrei. Brachas of the Shema. Brachas before the Shema Esrei. Psukkah de Zimra. Then Karbanis was added. And then we should also say other stuff in the morning, other brachas in the morning, and afterwards, and all of a sudden davening is an hour long. Then you have to say Tehillim. Then you have to learn before davening to prepare for davening. It's gone longer and longer. We need more and more davening. Why? Why do we need so much davening? As every generation goes on, and we go further and deeper into the materialism of this world, we need even more passion in davening. It's not because we're greater than previous generations. On the contrary, because we face the deepest evil of any generation. We face the most materialism, the most gashmias, the deepest challenge to spirituality of any generation before us. So we need to separate it out with a much more powerful fire, and that can only come through davening. So we have to purify it to bring it back to its source. The physical world is not an opposition to Hashem. It really comes from Hashem as well. It's Hashem's world. Like the prostitute is the king's servant. When we contemplate that this world can only exist from Hashem, all the gashmis, all the physicality of the world is only from Hashem. It couldn't live without it. Only Hashem gives it existence and life. So what comes out is there is no such thing as evil as a separate entity. And so to pain, that we suffer in this world. When you think about the above, so then evil just melts away, it dissolves, because there is no opposition. There's nothing outside of Hashem. So the whole davening is to transform the body, to turn around our body, to realize that our body is also from Hashem. This world is also from Hashem. The physicality of this world is also a divine thing. Now, like we said about Nachum Ish Gamzu, all tzaddikim of all times also said this is also for the good. Have you ever wondered why is Nachum Ish Gamzu called Nachum Ish Gamzu? He was the only one who said that this is for the good. What did other tzaddikim say when bad things happened? This is really bad. Everyone says it's for. The difference is, Nachum Ish Gamzu was able to make it a reality that it was good. Not just believe it was good, but actually draw it down. He could see it in the physical world that it was good. It could bring it down. So therefore, that's why he was called Gamzu, the person who said this. You can only say this about something that's right in front of you. He was able to make it this, that this in front of you was good. The rest of us and tzaddikim of all generations believed it was good. He was able to draw it down. That was what was unique about him. Top of the next column on the left there, after the brackets, the second line. All other tzaddikim, even though they could think along the same lines as Nachum Ish Gamzu, but the goodness still remained above. It didn't come down, it wasn't translated into this world necessarily. There weren't necessarily, not every tzaddik was able to bring down the good into this world. Nachum Ish Gamzu could. Okay. So now with all this, with this understanding, we can answer the question that we began with on the fourth line. Now we can understand the copper serpent. Remember the copper serpent? Mm-hmm. What was the copper serpent?
Is it the healing?
When you look up.
Yeah. When the Jewish people were attacked by snakes, and they came to Moshe and said, take these snakes away. And Hashem prayed to Hashem. Hashem said to him, okay, make a snake, a figure of a snake, put it on top of a pole, hold it up in the air, and anyone who's bitten by a snake should stare at it and they'll get better. That's what it says in the Torah. So the Mishnah asks, what? Looking at a snake makes you better? It has some power to heal you by looking at a snake. So the Mishnah says, no. By looking up at Hashem, they got better. Because they looked up into the sky, they subjugated their hearts to Hashem. That's what made them better. So the Alter Rebbe asked, fine, so what do you need a snake for? Yeah? Mm-hmm. You see the answer? Listen to this. The fourth line. This is the idea of the copper snake. They had to put it on top of a pole. The idea of the pole was to lift the snake up into the heavens. And that would cause them to look upwards. What does that mean? Originally we thought, look upwards and think of Hashem. So what's it to do with a snake? No. What it means is, don't think that the snake down here biting you is separate from the heavens, is not coming from Hashem, and therefore it really is bad, and it stays bad, and it can only be bad. No. Look at the snake, not as it's biting you down here, but look at it as its source is in heaven. That the snake that's biting you down here has a source in heaven, it's coming from Hashem. By looking up at the snake on the top of the pole and visualizing that the snake that's biting me down here, the pain that is hurting me, is actually coming from a heavenly source up there.
Then it will be like really good, like Nachum Ish Gamzu.
She'enu nifred mi'ito yisbarach. It's not separate from Hashem. V'chayusay mishamhu. And the life force of this snake that is biting me down here is actually from Hashem. K'mashal hazonim ben hamelech. Just like the prostitute comes from the king. In kain ein ra yored milamayla. If that's the case, well, nothing bad comes from Hashem. So I can't conclude that this snake biting me is bad news. It's good news. It's coming from Hashem. As soon as I realize that, as soon as I see the snake not as down here but up there, so then it's going to stop biting me. I'll be healed.
Was the punishment of the snakes a punishment because of the seduction of the prostitute?
What do you mean?
The balpoa? What was the...
No, the snake was because they complained about the food.
Didn't make a nice twist.
I have
know,
a
it's
question. The
really
whole thing
cool.
with Nachum Gamzu is that he really he didn't just believe it was good.
Right.
He was able to really be good, so he was able to bring it down as that.
Correct.
From a source.
Correct.
So are you saying that we also have the ability to...
This is saying that
so
the generation with Moshe Rabbeinu and the snake that he made had the power to look up and see the snake down here as the snake up there. And as soon as that happened, it was healed. Yeah, they were healed. They didn't die from a snake bite. In other words, they realized that we were being bitten in order to do tshuva. Yeah. This was all out of love. Hashem wants to bring us back. And so as soon as you realize that, so then you've solved the problem. It's not saying that we can do this every time. Like it said here, Nachum Gamzu and his generation, they're after this time, after the Torah, and nevertheless, only Nachum Gamzu is called Nachum Gamzu. He was a unique person who was able to do this.
Yeah.
But on some level, we can all do this. In other words, certainly the meditation we can all do. When bad things happen, to meditate that really this is coming from a higher source. And that already takes the edge off the pain. That's certainly true. Whether we can actually turn it around, take it back to its source and make it into good, we're not Nachum Gamzu. But on some level we can. Because when you realize that the reason for whatever painful thing is coming to you is for some good, maybe it's a call to tshuva, whatever it is, so then it served its purpose. And if the whole point is to bring you to tshuva, and you do tshuva, you realize it's coming from Hashem and you get the message, so then it doesn't have to be there anymore. And that could take away the pain. It might. It might not. But it certainly takes away the harshness of the pain, the bitterness of the pain. And that, the Alter Rebbe concludes, there's just one more line of the maamar. That's why it was made out of copper. Hashem told him to make a snake. He didn't tell him to make it out of copper, but he made it out of copper. Moshe. Why? Because copper has this property that you can transform its color through returning it to its original state. That copper has different tones to it, and by putting it back in the fire, taking it back to its source, it can actually transform its color. Most metals have a color that they are, and they don't change all that much. Copper can change into all different colors. And so copper represented the ability to transform something by taking it back to its source. By taking it into its raw material, you can transform it. So, just like Nachum Gamzu took a bad episode, meditated on its source, and then rearranged it so it should come down as good. Just like the Yidden were expecting to take this snake bite and meditate on its source. So copper represents that power to take back to its source and change the color, change the flavor. And Alter Rebbe concludes, "V'hamei v'nyavin," and the one who understands will understand.